The shadow of Donald Trump and concerns over President Biden's candidacy are looming over this week's NATO summit in Washington. Moments ago, I spoke with White House National Security Council Coordinator Admiral John Kirby. Here is that conversation. John, it's really good to have you. Thank you for being here. It's a pivotal day in Washington with NATO in town. Can you walk me through what's happening?
Well, right now, the North Atlantic Council is meeting in a full session. The president's there at that session, had some opening comments. But this is really the set piece, the biggest and the set piece event for the summit, where all the NATO allies literally gather around a table, and each in turn get a chance to talk about the challenges and opportunities before them as individual nations, but more critically as NATO allies.
NATO has the threat of Russia at its doorstep. They've added more members. What's the feeling about the ability of the alliance to stick together for not just the next few months, but potentially the next few years?
You know, I've been involved with NATO in or out for much of the last 35 years, even as a young naval officer. And I can honestly tell you, Katie, I've never seen the NATO alliance more unified, more resolved, more determined, or more strong than it is right now. As you rightly said, we've now added the 32nd ally. Sweden joins officially this week. So it's a bigger alliance. And it's an alliance that is very much keenly watching what's going on the European continent, obviously with what Mr. Putin is doing in Ukraine. And these two new members, Finland and Sweden, these are modern militaries that we know how to work with very, very well, and they're going to bring real capability to alliance deterrence and defense.
President Biden has gotten a lot of credit for making this alliance stronger, especially in the face of Russia and the war in Ukraine. At the same time, we've been hearing from people in the national security realm that NATO allies are worried about President Biden. I had Ian Bremmer on yesterday, and he said, and I'm going to read this as a quote, every world leader attending NATO that he has met with does not think Joe Biden can serve another 4 years, that they're deeply concerned, is what he says, that President Biden's going to lose to Donald Trump. You're in the National Security Council. You speak for them. Can you tell us how the allies have reacted to this moment with President Biden?
All I can do is tell you what the conversations that we've been having in the run-up to the summit, and certainly over the last 24, 36 hours as the summit kicked off. And it's about what you and I have been talking about. It's about NATO's relevance going forward, making sure we have strong defense industrial bases across the alliance, making sure we continue to stand up to Putin, making sure that we are all still supporting Ukraine. The focus of the conversations that we've been having with our interlocutors and the president with his is really all around strength of the alliance, the importance of this moment. And I'll go one more, the importance of American leadership in the alliance and around the world. And these allies have been making it clear. They're grateful for what President Biden has done to strengthen NATO, and they look forward to continuing to work with the United States going forward for that end.
There's also a lot of reporting that they're really worried about a potential for a second Donald Trump term, increasingly worried. Why are they worried about Donald Trump?
I got to be careful here, Katie, because I don't want to violate the Hatch Act and get myself into trouble. I'm not allowed to talk about election politics. I would just say that what they have seen over the last 3.5 years, certainly since Putin invaded Ukraine 2.5 years ago, is how much American leadership matters. Think about, and I don't want to talk just in vague terms, think about the coordination of the delivery of weapons and munitions to Ukraine. The United States is leading that coordination effort. Now, we couldn't do it without Poland, of course. That's where the center is. But the United States is leading the effort of more than 50 nations to come together and provide weapons and equipment for Ukraine. The United States has led the world in holding Mr. Putin accountable from an economics perspective. Other nations have joined in with sanctions, and that's great. But they look to the United States for that kind of leadership. And they are all looking for continued American leadership, not only as we continue to support Ukraine, but as we try to make sure that this alliance is best suited to meet the future. After Mr. Putin. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Is there a sense of when the war in Ukraine might come to an end, or how it might come to an end?
We all believe that this war is probably going to end through some sort of negotiation. And make no mistake, Katie, it could end today if Mr. Putin was pulling troops out of Ukraine where they don't belong in the first place. Now, I know that's not going to happen, and he's not serious about sitting down and having any kind of negotiation. I can't give you a date certain. I wish I could. But what I can tell you is that whenever this ends, it's going to have to end in a way that that meets the needs and the aspirations of the Ukrainian people, and that has the approbation of President Zelensky, who has put forth a just peace proposal that we support and many nations around the world support. We can't allow the war to end until or unless President Zelensky is ready to have that negotiation and sit down. And that's just not where we are right now as the Ukrainians continue to battle back around the east and the south of the country for the ground that the Russians have tried to take in recent weeks.
I know you can't violate the Hatch Act, so I'm going to ask you a question that is not really about the campaign. It's more about the president himself. You've had interactions with him. You're in meetings with him. We've had a lot of people on this show who have expressed deep concern about his fitness, his mental acuity, and that does also include lawmakers who have had interactions with him. And George Clooney just came out with an op-ed today saying that he's not the man that he was in 2020. What has your experience been with President Biden on crucial decision-making regarding national security?
My experience with President Biden as Commander-in-Chief has been with a leader who understands the complexity of the challenges that we're facing. And just as importantly, in fact, I'd say maybe even more importantly, has the wisdom and experience of so many long years in government service. And he has relationships with leaders around the world. You're seeing it on display right here at the Washington Convention Center that really matter in terms of finding solutions to some of these problems. When I'm in the room with him, and I get to be in the room with him, I'm privileged to do that often. He asks tough questions. He asked me questions yesterday that I couldn't answer. I had to go back and do the homework assignment and come back to him. He understands the complexities of the world we're living in, and he has the experience and the wisdom that comes with that experience to handle those challenges.
And do you think he can still make hard decisions over the next 4 years if he is elected again? I'm not asking you to get into election politics, but if you remain in that job and you're going to work with him, what do you think?
Nothing that I've seen in the 2.5 years that I've been privileged to work at the White House tells me that the president isn't on top of these issues and won't be able to still remain on top on these issues.
All right, John Kirby, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate it.
Hey there, MSNBC fans. I'm Luke Russert, and be sure to join me, Rachel Maddow, Jen Psaki, Lawrence O'Donnell, Steve Kornacki, Joy Reid, and many more September 7th in Brooklyn, MSNBC Live Democracy 2024. Click on the link for ticket information. We will see you there.